Hello and welcome to Contra Mundum. Very special episode, as always. I say that every week, but this is a special one.
Very special.
We're joined with Ron Dodson, the official geopolitical analyst of Contra Mundum, to talk about the Syrian civil war, which appears to have come to an end with the ouster of Bashar al-Assad. Ron, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Well, glad to be here. Lots going on in the world. Of course,
Yes.
Nothing ever happens.
Nothing ever happens, but something definitely did happen this past weekend, and I mean, a huge, massive development. I think probably the biggest development in the Middle East, certainly since the United States pulled out of Afghanistan, but possibly even bigger than that in terms of the geopolitics and the implications that it has.
Well, I think a lot of pieces are going to start moving around the board for sure.
Before we get started, Ron, do you think this was related to the Trump victory at all?
Well, I think yes and no. I think the momentum has been towards this for a while, but I think that the Trump victory has been an accelerant for those who wish for the current order to stay the current order, to make things happen. Although we can talk more about that in detail, maybe in a little bit, because I don't think Trump himself or his people had anything directly to do to this, but the impending, I might have had a minor impact.
Well, but in terms of, I mean, obviously we're going to talk about the relation of this situation to the Ukraine war. And obviously now that the Trump victory has signaled the fact that, Ukraine is not going to be able to be basically like a money laundering scheme in as easy a way as during the Biden years. And since they're all related, I wonder if there's just some significant things happening to prepare for like sort of a new agenda in the Middle East.
Well, I think that's possible. I just think I think the momentum towards this has been moving for several years now. The U.S. had a huge impact just from the U.S.-led sanctions have hollowed out the Syrian military capability for years and years. And while Syria wasn't a Russian proxy, it definitely was an ally. Yeah. And Russia just got to the point where they couldn't prop it up anymore. It was too easy. Too easy,
right? Like that's the punchline. Like, what's behind this? Yeah. What happened? I was hoping we could talk a little bit first about the United States narrative in global affairs is basically that like bad guys are like the recreation of Hitler, and we're always on the side of the Allies, and that's just kind of how we interpret world events. And so in this case, Assad was the most evil man in history. Right. As always, like there's all of these most evil men in history. Yeah. Putin is another most evil man in history. So Assad is one of those guys, but maybe give a more balanced understanding of who Assad was and what he meant to the Syrian region.
Well, I just think Assad in real terms was he was a Ba'athist. So you're speaking of in the same vein as Saddam Hussein, but much more mild-mannered. Hussein was more in the kind of early 20th century vein of kind of fascistic type of leaders, whereas Assad, very mild-mannered, eye doctor, literally kind of guy, and kind of struck me as kind of and there's lots of interviews. I mean, the biggest one that you can still get access to is from 2017, where he's critical, honestly, of Trump, and he makes some key points in that interview. But he comes across as let's say I'm supposed to be on do not disturb, but he comes across as kind of a cross between a Hussein type, but also from the former Shah. If you've ever watched old
Yeah.
interviews of the Shah, just very measured, not playing a ton on emotion. Now, to be clear, this is a people, and this is going to sound, very harsh if folks haven't. If this is your first exposure to Contra Mundum, I'm going to go ahead and hit you hard. These are a people who have no liberal presuppositions as to maintaining order. So you're not going to get that democratic glaze over everything that is said. I mean, these are people who speak frankly and know that their people, in order to maintain order, need to be ruled. And that's not making an excuse for some of the harsher things Assad did, but is in the grand scheme of Middle East autocratic rulers, he was, not that much different from an Erdogan personality wise, maybe more mild mannered even than Erdogan. Mm-hmm. And believe me, Erdogan was the one who really wanted this to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, just even like comparing him to the, just think of that funny, comparing him to the Saudis, for example, and how they operate their country and run their country. Like, these are not nice guys. They're not Western liberal democratic people that believe in rule of, supposedly at least believe in rule of law. And so, yeah, like I always looked at that. I mean, the big thing in, what was it, 2014, 2015 was Assad gassed his own people. He killed all his own people. And all of that, I mean, it's probably been memory hold and forgotten, but they never were able to make a very convincing case that he was doing those things.
Well, I mean, the United States has long wanted to go after the Assad regime.
Oh yeah,
right. Like
that's the famous Wesley Clark.
I mean, clip. Syrian interventionism has been on the radar for the United States
30 years.
Since the Project for the New American Century, right?
Yeah, and let's just talk about what are the levers, because Syria in of itself is not a. There's oil in the Northeast, but it's not levels of Kuwait or Iraq.
Yeah, it's not a Gulf state. Yeah,
no, but call it between $30 and $50 million a month. So not a small. It's not a small amount, but it's not a huge
small amount at all. We don't quite make that much on Contra Mundum.
No, but, not yet.
Not yet. But that's in the Northeast. Mm-hmm. Syria has a lot of competing ethnic groups, mm-hmm. and the very nature of that competition means that the southern Turkish border, especially as you move to the southeast Turkish mm-hmm. border, has been destabilized for a long time. Especially in the Kurdish regions. The Kurds want to be an independent people, but that would be a landlocked independent people surrounded by enemies. So that's difficult, but it's just a mess. Turkey, I don't think Turkey has wanted to subdue this area for a long time. Why do we care about Turkey? Well, Turkey controls the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles, and that means access to the Black Sea. And so strategically, whether we agree with the Turkish people, their leaders, any of that, if the United States, and I'm not saying we should care that much at all about any of this, I'm just telling you why it's important. The Bosporus has been a hugely important strategic choke point for in geopolitical terms for a very long time, and the U.S. Considers that a very important spot, and that's why Turkey is important.
Well, and I mean, Syria in particular. I mean, you just look at, all the reasons. I mean, all the reasons why the American regime would be keen on overthrowing Assad. I mean, Turkey is one reason why. Obviously, they share a border with Israel as well, and the
Well, and
Israelis
yes,
have
and there lots of
occupied the
developments
Golan.
in that today as well.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Why don't you talk about that? Like you sent me something before we went on here about partitioning Syria, and that might be the plan that they want to enact.
well, the Israel has considers because of the Syrian and Lebanese connections with Iran.
Mm-hmm.
Israel is has been very concerned and preoccupied through the Hezbollah in Lebanon, primarily in Beirut, and the Iranian influence in Syria has meant that this has been a hugely important part of the world. Syria's outcome has been hugely important to Israel. Now, Israel, since this happened last weekend, the IDF has been incredibly active in destroying each and every Syrian military asset they can find. They have stayed away from the Russian military assets, which is smart.
They just don't want to provoke.
Yeah, they don't want to provoke anything. No.
Absolutely. But the so the IDF has been actively bombing Army, Navy, and logistic supply points very actively. And also since then, they have moved to occupy the Mount Hermon region.
Mm-hmm.
And what I sent you earlier is, and this is from a good source, that the Druze, representatives for the Druze people, which is a tribal people in the southwest part of Syria, have reached out to Israel for annexation and protection. And that's part of this, the foothills on the northeast side of Mount Hermon, which Israel has now occupied, and I don't see them giving that up, honestly. It's a very strategic point. But what would be interesting in this is, okay, is Israel going to be a regional, non-ethnic power now?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a geopolitical question.
Yeah, if they annex them,
go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, so if they annexed them, they wouldn't. I mean, it would have to be some kind of protectorate or something like that. I can't imagine that they would.
Well,
say,
would it be Would it be a West Bank situation or a Gaza Strip? I don't think. I think they've learned their lesson with Gaza, that they can't do that anymore. But this would almost certainly bring certain calls for sanctions within the UN. But boy, that it's got to be incredibly tempting for the hardliners in Israel to take this take this offer very seriously. And the U.S. would be, at least until I can imagine Marco Rubio being for this, who's the incoming Secretary of State. So you're gonna. Let me put it this way: the U.S. has gotten its way on the surface of this, but there are. It's going from one set of problems to another set of problems.
In what way has the U.S. gotten its way? Why does this benefit U.S. interests?
Okay, so now we're getting to the Russia issue.
When I say the United States, I mean the regime.
So two main things. Number one, to please Turkey, because this makes Turkey happy. Absolutely makes Turkey happy. It subdues their southern border, at least for the time being, although the Kurds are absolutely going to want a seat at the table. And again, the U.S. sees placating Turkey is important because of the geopolitical importance of the Bosporus, the access to the Black Sea. More importantly, this really hems in Russia. And Russia has two bases, one naval base and one air base in Syria as it stands now. Although as of early for us today, they are evacuating both of those. Now, I've listened to sources, I know you have, Andrew, that says this was all part of a grand scheme by Russia, but I find the developments today being kind of being contra to that. They've moved out their S-400 anti air to ground to air missile systems. 2 large cargo planes have landed to evacuate material and personnel out of the airbase. All the main ships have set sail into the Med and have evacuated the naval base, and we've seen confirmation of that with satellite imagery as of today. So Russia, I know, could no longer support what was going on, their ally in Syria, because the Syrian military had been the sanction regime led by the United States hollowed the Syrian military to the point they just couldn't defend themselves anymore, and Russia couldn't prop them up.
Yeah,
but I don't think Russia is pleased. I don't think they are talking. It came out today out of Moscow that they are meeting with Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, the HTS group, but I don't think it's going, at least in the short term, the way they want, or they wouldn't be evacuating en masse. I mean, these are massive 5-mile convoys out of their bases to get material out. So
okay,
again, that's my read right now.
So who's in control of Syria now then?
Well, right now it seems to be this HTS group, and these are, we're already seeing these. This is a radical Islamic group.
Are they like U.S. backed?
Yeah, they're what we would. I mean, I had a meeting. This has been about a year ago with a Kurdish source who warned about this very group. And was very disillusioned as to the CIA backing of what amounts to ISIS light. They are not ISIS. They're basically the only positive to this group is they're not ISIS, but as far as their treatment of moderates and of Christians, we've already seen Christians being rounded up in Damascus. I haven't seen any evidence of mass killings yet, but we have seen videos of them being rounded up, detained. The very things that concerned us when all of us on our side of things, through some of the actions of in the Bush years, we're seeing the same kind of thing play out here
in Iraq.
But I am, this is an Islamist group. They're just. My Kurdish contact called them ISIS light, basically.
Now, is this similar to what happened in Afghanistan? Like what kind of government are they going to create? What are their interests? I'm just trying to tease this out a little bit and see where it goes from here.
That remains to be seen. As the Afghani situation, I think, is a bit more primitive. I think this is a more, again, we're grading on a curve here, but I think this is a little bit more experienced and savvy group, because they've had to be in dealing with all the different players. The Afghani group seems to be savvy in their sense, but more insular. This is an Islamist group that is looking to, I think, work ties within the greater Islamic peoples within the region. Whereas I think the Afghanis are a little more okay being isolationist. And again, we're grading kind of fine. This is very fluid, but that's my read currently.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think you definitely can't separate the the Syrian war and the Ukraine war, I think you have to look at them both as the same conflict, right? I mean, obviously the
Well, with the Russian angle, I think
yeah.
you do. The hard thing is this is going to Russia's going to move into Libya hard. I
Mhm.
suspect because they have to maintain their ability to project into their interests in Africa. And honestly, I believe even though the three letters are trying to work against Russian activity in
Yeah.
Africa, who are they balancing out in Africa? It's not us. They're balancing
China.
out the
Yeah.
Chinese in Africa, and that goes to
Mhm.
our interests, honestly.
Yeah.
Even though the three letters are against that for a whole host of reasons. I mean, I think this
Mhm.
goes not to get too that way about it, but this goes back to hard feelings going all the way back to the Pale of Settlement issues,
Yeah.
and that's just a hugely anti-Russian
Yeah.
disposition within state and with the intelligence agencies that really are just go back to old grudges.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Centuries old ethnic grudges. Yeah.
absolutely that are not held against the Chinese. The Chinese are just seen as kind of this malleable force coming from another side,
Mhm.
but they're
Yeah.
fishing our oceans dry. We need to do
Yeah.
something about that.
I'm trying to get a
And
letter of marque from President Trump. So we'll see if that happens. That's what we had some. That's why we were late today. Sorry, everybody. We were driving back in the traffic in Nashville. We went to Franklin, Tennessee, to meet with some very important people. Very important people in
doing
Franklin,
very important things.
doing very important things, and we got to meet with them, and maybe that came up. Right? I don't know. I don't know. I would love to get my hands on an old destroyer and just go sailing in the Pacific. But anyway, no,
well,
I
you're going to
think
see with regards to that, you're going to see you're already seeing some propaganda come up about
Mhm.
our involvement through contractors in northeast Syria in seizing some of the oil assets. You're going to see propaganda, uh, anti-Trump propaganda, come out about that very soon. I'm
for
already
sure.
seeing
Yeah.
some stuff about that because the way any kind of foreign power would work to counteract a new the new guy coming in who's really kind of the old guy who's unpredictable. One of the greatest things about Trump is he is unpredictable and he's willing to do unorthodox things, is to
Mhm.
just discredit from the get-go.
Mhm.
And so you're going to see some of that
Mhm.
coming out pretty soon. I have a feeling. One of the things that I am a respecter, even though I don't agree with him all the time, but he's fearless and he doesn't always hold to the post-war consensus. So I enjoy listening to Mearsheimer out of the University of
Yeah.
Chicago.
Mhm.
He's
A big
not one of
Mearsheimer
us.
fan. Yeah.
He's not one of us, but he's certainly not one of them. So I find him very interesting. And he said that Turkey is really going to try to assert themselves all the way down through Eastern Africa in this rebuilding of an
Mhm.
Ottoman kind
Yeah.
of reality.
Interesting.
And so that's something what does that look like? I know that they've
Yeah.
been working very hard in Eritrea.
Hmm.
The Eastern Africa is not it's not at war, but it's not super peaceful right now. You have the whole Blue Nile and the
Yeah.
damming of the Nile
Mhm.
controversy that's going on. So I would look for Turkey to start asserting themselves there. And Mearsheimer's pointed this out,
Yeah.
and then he also pointed out that if Trump wants to work with Putin to end this Ukraine conflict, and we see this connection here, that sticking this in Putin's eye, which he came out yesterday and Trump said, Putin's been humiliated here, is probably not the way to go. It doesn't surprise me with Trump.
Well, there could be some gamesmanship there, you know. Where,
I totally agree. The question is that wise or not? I think that everybody's going to be trying to increase the power of their apparent the cards that are up. They're going to try to put a lot of shine on those, so to speak,
absolutely,
until we see what's in the deck.
Yeah, like, so the way I see this, like, the greatest, the winners here are the United States, Israel, and Turkey. I mean, like, that's it. Like, that's the winners. That's who benefits. Would you consider this a major like Russian loss? Like, this is a blow to the Russian interests and Russian sovereignty. Some of the things that it's interested in, especially as expressed to the Ukrainian, point of view.
I think logistically losing those two bases is going to be very painful for Russia. If it sticks, and we don't know for sure, they may be just precautionary. It may be precaution that they're what looks to be a evacuation at this point. But if they lose that naval base, that's a year-round blue water port into the Med. That doesn't rely on, when the Ukraine war started, Turkey limited access through the Bosphorus to the Russians, and they have the right to do that via treaty. But Russia still had access via the Syrian naval base, and it's a big base. It's able to house their largest ships. So that's an issue for Russia. That would be a huge loss. Their ability to get to the Atlantic via the north is treacherous because of the Arctic issues.
Yeah.
And they're having real problems they're having issues in the Baltic right now due to NATO. Now the new admittance to NATO are pretty much in a state of constant exercise. So it's difficult for Russia to do what it wants through the Baltic. So this was a very important outlet for them. And then the Air Force Base, just logistically, it allowed them to get to Africa without refueling. And that's important. Refueling multiple airplanes, that's, we're good at it, but it's not cheap.
Yeah.
And it's a logistical nightmare. So that would be a pretty big blow. And it keeps them from being able to project power from their southern flanks. So that's a big loss. It's not immense, but it's not unimportant.
Yeah. So I mean, I look at it. I mean, given the facts on the ground, I mean, one, is this huge loss for Russia, right? Whether they keep the bases or not, like them having Assad in power was so important, so massive for them, and which makes me think, especially because like the Ukraine war appears to be winding down, that Trump is elected, peace will be achieved. I think it's very likely that conflict will come to an end, and it's definitely possible in my mind that they reached an accord. They reached a deal. I mean, you remember at the very beginning of the Ukraine war, the third, since they're not really talking to each other, both Ukraine and Russia, but also Russia and NATO, that Israel was the third party that brokered all these deals.
Yeah, well, Israel's the really big winner in this deal.
Oh, they definitely are. Yeah, and
they could go from being, again, they just is the power base in Israel going to stay the same? Are we going to see the same regime continue? There's questions about that, but Israel is facing. Are they going to has an opportunity to really kind of leapfrog here, and Trump's going to have some issues as to how that's seen in the wider Arab world, because one of Trump's biggest achievements in his first term was what amounted to a peace deal between and a commercialized peace deal between Israel and the Saudis. Are the Saudis going to continue to be okay with that if Israel's that much more powerful? That remains to be seen.
Yeah, they probably, from their perspective, don't really have much choice, right? There's not much they can do,
right? Right.
And so I look at it, and I'm like, like the conflict. I remember maybe it was 2 weeks ago. You start seeing these stories of like all of the ISIS or moderate rebels or whatever getting broken out of prison, and thinking, that's stuff starting to pop off over there again. That's interesting. I wonder what's going on. And then within a matter of days, it's like, Assad is dead, or his plane crashed, or he fled the country, or whatever. And it's like that seems weird, right? That could happen that quickly, that fast, apart from some kind of arrangement, right? With the Russians, or at the very minimum, the Russians just saying, we cannot continue to support you.
Right. I think it's absolutely the Russians crying uncle. There's just nothing. I mean, they're stretched. Look, they're in better shape than our media would lead us to believe. But Ukraine is not a resource. That's a resource drain. And
so one of the things that's interesting to me is it seems like with the Trump administration coming into play, the whole Ukraine pressure would have dissipated and Russia would have had some relief on that end of things. So I don't know why now, 30 days out from a Trump, taking over, they would have let go of the reins in Syria. Like, it doesn't quite make sense to me.
Well, CJ, I think it has to do with I think it's trying to strengthen your hand, and I agree with that. But I think that our intelligence seems to have helped with this push, although we, can't be sure. It's not like it's not like the CIA's putting on their website, hey, here's what we're doing.
Here's what we did in Syria.
But it seems as though there was this push. Everyone's trying to strengthen their hand. And so if Russia wants to keep their hand as strong as possible in Ukraine to prepare for a negotiated settlement, that, hey, they needed to fold their cards here because they couldn't do both.
That's a good explanation.
I think that's also part of why if it's not a full evacuation, why they're taking some of their assets out of the Syrian bases, if they still think they can get a negotiated settlement to keep those bases, which publicly that's what they are saying, by the way. We're just seeing satellite footage. So maybe they're moving their assets around to, if they move if they put a bunch of S-400 installations in their occupied regions of Ukraine, well, then suddenly they have more cover to use their Air Force to make a final push before a negotiated settlement, and see how much more, because they have been gaining land at the highest rate since the beginning of the special military operation.
Well, I mean, just to switch gears a little bit, one of the things that I'm interested in is the narratives that play. Like you see all the typical regime, media outlets basically declaring that this is a victory for democracy and against, authoritarianism in the Middle East and all that kind of stuff. But, one angle that I think we are interested in is what happens when you lose a moderate, in terms of the Middle East, Assad was a moderate. So what happens when you lose that, that force there? What happens to people like the traditional Syrian Christians? Like, what does the future look like for them? Yay, democracy won, but what happens to the Syrian Christians? What happens to the secularists in Syria? Maybe comment on that.
Well, like I said earlier, the early signs are not good. We've had video leak out showing groups of Christians being detained and rounded up. We haven't seen executions yet, but we have seen some pretty harsh treatment. And look, this is an Islamist group that currently has power. This is not a group that, for instance, even the most hardcore Christian nationalist would say, "Hey, our goal is to keep competing." I say a Christian nationalist view would say, for instance, what we're trying to do is control the public square. This is not that. This is to control. This is a Sharia law type of group. So I don't think the prospects for any of the minorities, not just the Christians, are very good. Now, the public face, in the sense of that which is coming out from the U.S. perspective is, hey, we want a pluralistic, an inclusive. These are the words coming out of state right now.
Yeah, we want a DEI Syria.
Yeah. Right now, that does not look like what is happening in any stretch.
No, of course not.
So again, we're in very, very early. Maybe it shakes out. Maybe we go in and wait for this to settle down, and then we go try to put one of our Harvard-educated, color revolution. We try to Maidan the place, but but at the current juncture, that does not look to be in the cards, and it doesn't look good for not just Christians, but Druze, Kurds, or any of the smaller, even Muslim minorities.
Right. I mean, that's one of the objectives of a good statesman. And I'm not saying Assad is a good person, a good man, or whatever. But like one of the I'm not coming either way on that. But like one of the things about someone like him is to synthesize the interests of all the varying groups within your country. And I think he's done a decent role as the stabilizing force in the region. And one of the things that the U.S. loves to do is they love to destabilize. They love chaos. Because we have very much of a chaos mentality when it comes to foreign policy, and other people's destruction is for the benefit of exploitation.
It's been the case for a very, very long time. It's funny. We became that was the communist. The USSR specialized there in creating chaos in order to destabilize, and then to promote the revolutionary fronts within a society. And we've become the very people we conquered. We do the same thing because within chaos, we believe we can exert outsized influence. Ultimately, make no mistake, the U.S. foreign policy is to make global partners that really toe the line and become just like us. So McDonald's on every corner with a pride flag out front. I don't know why I picked on McDonald's, but Starbucks out front.
Starbucks too,
yeah, Starbucks, whoever.
Yeah,
and a mattress store on every corner.
Or firm.
So. Just to commercialize, to destroy because localism this is part of the post-war consensus.
Yeah.
That liberalism, cosmopolitanism cannot coexist with any type of localism.
Yeah.
It is. And so we destabilize in order to homogenate. And that has been the game plan. I
look back at Afghanistan, right? Like, the big fear was all of these women who have gotten gender studies degrees in Kabul. What's going to happen to them? Right.
Yeah. Well, what happened is their college credits were revoked, and they reported to a new set of classes.
Yeah. I mean, it's like they want to make, right. They wanted to make Kabul, Afghanistan into Boulder, Colorado. Right. Like it's insane. It's nuts.
It is insane. And it's sad, but if you're coming at it from this neoliberal materialist where there is no transcendence, and let's be honest, that's the, these people wink at religion. They wink at values. They wink at metaphysics. But honestly, what they've done is create a world order where all those things are barred from the public square. That there is no metaphysical understanding to how people relate to one another. That there is no morality that goes beyond just whatever the majority wants, and the majority can only reflect that which the imperial capital says. Yeah. It's really even in I really have come to appreciate how the Orthodox operate in this deal. I mean, I'm a committed and convicted Presbyterian, but the Orthodox understanding of the marriage of the church and the state in promoting order, a virtuous order for the people to coexist. And hey, look, usually that just means the state runs things, but the ideal is much better than this homogenated, outlawed metaphysical understanding of reality, which just makes everyone into an NPC at best.
Well, I mean, like at the end of the day, like we already have the marriage between religion and state, right now, and and that
yeah, okay, religion. Yeah, sure. Yeah, just a non-metaphysical religion. Absolutely.
Totally materialist religion. It's, it's all about consumption. It's all about individualism, self-expression, all of these things. And that's, and that's what the United States sees as part of its, function in world history, is to basically extend these insanities throughout the entire world. I mean, obviously they have these ridiculous, gender, mutilation programs here in America. They would love to see that in the Middle East.
Well, that's the
chaos that they like to incite.
That's right. It's their own form of sacrifice.
Yeah. Correct.
And they think they've outlawed metaphysics. It's a metaphysic that is pointed down instead of up.
Yeah.
And that's what's scary. The Bible is clear that these principalities are real, and you can think that you're created a religion that is devoid of anything transcendent, but all you've done is point the transcendence the exact wrong way. You can't escape it. There is even science tells us that there is a world beyond that which we can't, which we can see, and it's a weird world, but it's pretty cool. It seems to line up a lot with what the Bible says. Imagine that. So
how about that?
How about that? Isn't that weird? So anyway, this is all more of the same. I mean, it's me. It's like the Who said, meet the new boss, same as the old boss.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the black pill. It's like Turbo America is real. The American regime is not faltering, but it seems to be on a whole new leg of strength. That's what I see in this.
I mean, yes and no. I'm not going to disagree too strongly with you, CJ, but I think if this were 30 years ago, the American regime would not have just paid a bunch of jihadis to overthrow the Assad government. They would have said Bashar al-Assad is a terrorist threatening to attack the United States, and we need to invade. And they would have invaded and spent $1 trillion doing it and brought freedom to Syria. And they can't do that stuff anymore. Like the United States military is incredibly powerful. We talked about how, if we want to put an airplane anywhere on the planet, we can do it. We have the logistical capacity to do that. We have technological wonders that people couldn't have even imagined 40 years ago, much less 100 years ago. So it was like, there's a lot that they can do, but their ability to project strength has lessened more and more and more as time has gone on. I mean, some of that is just the decline internally of the United States, the decline of their ability to maintain control over the people of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is it's declining in strength. And even though this appears to be just a stunning victory for the globalist American empire, it's kind of a Pyrrhic victory for them. And the other factor, I mean, we've alluded to it a little bit, is what this will unleash that we cannot adequately predict.
Well, I mean, but the thing is, like, if you have a sort of standoff in the Middle East between Russia and the United States, and Russia's at a place where it's going to have to retreat a little bit, where does that leave the balance of powers in the Middle East? I mean, it's like total American victory here. So, like, what is I don't know, Ron, if you pay attention to the Chinese interests at all, but like, I don't know if they have anything going for it here, but this just seems to me like it's the balance of powers have been thrown strongly in the United States' favor.
I think so. I think so too. I don't know what's coming. I think that the plan right now is you have chaos there, which will be taken advantage of primarily by Israel.
Mm-hmm.
I think Israel grows in power, and the way we view things right now is that's always good. I think that I would hope that the most rational of minds in the State Department and in the three letters, the goal is that we're seeing maybe that's a balance of power against Iran.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Saudis hate Iran, so maybe this is a three-legged stool.
Yeah.
Now, Russia, I think they just signed an oil agreement with Iran. I could be.
Yeah.
I've read too much since early this morning, but Russia's going to. I mean, we'll get to China in a minute, but Iran is again, coming from a kind of hybrid realist standpoint, I miss the days of the Shah. I think the Persian people, the people that I know who are the Persian people are lovely. I find them profoundly interesting. They're beautiful, striking people, and with a rich history of the reestablishment, the Restoration Covenant was sponsored by the Persians,
right?
And so I long for a day when maybe in the best of all worlds, you see a three-legged stool of a sharing of that sphere of influence there. The problem I see with that is that I think as it stands now, we can't keep our thumb out of the pie. No. We just want to and a balance of power in the Middle East that would involve Iran, Israel, and the Saudis would look very different than something that was made in our image. And so that scares me. It's similar to Eastern Europe should be under the auspices of Hungary, Poland, and Romania. Three very vibrant cultures that are coming or experiencing a resurgence. But that doesn't look like how we would want it to look. Therefore, it's not going to happen. And that's the thing that scares me about this. Now, we're getting to China. What's India going to do? I mean, India is a sleeping giant.
Yeah.
I think China's focused right now, their Silk Road is really focused on solidifying their influence in especially Central Africa. Mm-hmm. So I don't see them playing a direct role as of yet here, although the technological partnership that could happen between them and Israel, because Israel is very, very good, especially in the communications piece, that could grow, especially as there's been sanctions against some of the Chinese firms. There's probably room there for strategic partnerships. As of yet, that doesn't seem to be happening. But I'd be looking to see what is Modi thinking here? What's India? How's India going to assert itself? Because you'd think, well, how about shouldn't they and China work together? The problem is they're not big friends. They've been fighting over the.
Well, I mean, isn't India pivoting to the United States in terms of its ally? Like
quite a bit.
Yeah.
A little, I think, to try to balance the influence that China's trying to have. I mean, right. China's really trying to run that part of the world for good reason.
Yeah.
And so I think they've pivoted a bit to the United States to try to balance that out. What their long-term trajectory is, I think they're hard to read. They're very hard to read. They have some internal issues with they're going to go through their own industrial revolution as their people still are progressing out of what is a soft caste system, not a hard caste system anymore. But a ton of their, what's going to happen is their top caste going to continue to move to the United States?
Yeah.
Or I hear the visa program that Trump is looking to completely shut that down. So it's, if we do that, which I'm all for, does that make India pivot away from us? And is that worth it? I mean, I think that's something, that's a good conversation to have.
Yeah. We can do a whole episode on India.
We should.
We absolutely can.
We should do a whole episode on India.
The DFW area here is one of the largest concentrations of Indian and Pakistani immigrants.
I was just there. I know.
Yeah.
I noticed.
CJ noticed.
I noticed.
Austin is as well. Yeah. And I do wonder. I mean, the wild card in all of this is, what happens in Ukraine. Like, I mean, going back, I mean, we've said this many times, like the point of the Ukraine war, from the perspective of the American regime is, I mean, it's obviously not the things that they say on TV, which is we have to protect democracy from this guy who's going to try to take over the world. It's obvious that Europe is dominated by the United States. It has been for 80 years, and or at least half of it for 80 years, and the rest of it for the last 30. And they've made advances for the last 30 years eastward, further and further and further, and they wanted to keep their thumb on the scale, right? They want to assert themselves. I mean, this is why the Nord Stream pipeline randomly blew up by someone. And
someone
who could have done that?
Someone.
Why? Yeah. Why would they do that? Well, because they don't want Germany. Like, if Germany has access to energy from Russia and has economic ties to Russia, then they aren't as bound to the United States.
That's right.
They could assert national sovereignty. They could say, maybe we don't want 1 million Syrians in our country, and all of these kinds of things, right? They could actually pursue their own interests for the first time in the better part of a century. And that simply cannot be allowed. So the point of the Ukraine war, from the perspective of the United States, was always to reassert American dominance over Europe. But the secondary goal is the off chance. I mean, they talked about this, especially like the neocons in the media. They talk about this, how they want to have regime change in Russia, and they've talked about this for decades now. And they thought, if we can weaken Putin, maybe the people will overthrow him, and so on and so forth. And of course, that never was actually ever going to happen.
Right.
But so, like, I mean, maybe they're just stupid and they thought that would happen, but I don't think they're that stupid. They are pretty stupid, but not quite to that extent. But yeah. Anyway, Ron, how do you think it shakes out? Do you think, like, obviously there's some kind of prelude to the end of the war, that this is in one way, shape or form, this is what they're doing to prepare for the end of that conflict. But where do things go from here, right? Where what does the United States do next if they are just stacking up these W's in Europe and in the Middle East, right? What is the American regime? Where do they set their sights on next, right? Africa.
I think right now it's all about strengthening of hands.
Yeah.
That's the near term. You're about to see a large NATO base be announced in Romania, which is part of the reason I think
with the presidential election,
the craziness went on in Romania. I don't think we wanted any hiccup to happen there. Although I do have it that wasn't a direct action of our three letters and from a trusted source, but it was influenced.
Mm-hmm.
Is Trump going to pull out of NATO?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I doubt it.
I don't think so. I think he, you get for a lot of reasons. I think that he is going to lean on. I think he'll lean on basically weakening the titular NATO leadership, and he will push for much greater monetary contribution to make it more of a federal rather than a top-down thing. Mm-hmm. Whether he succeeds at that, I don't know. You're about to see Germany have, unless they outlaw the opposition, you're about to see Germany have a sweeping election. And so that's going to change. You're going to see a pretty sweeping election in England. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be shaken up, and in France too. But Romania is about to have a massive.
You're saying you're saying that all these countries are shifting rightward.
I'm saying all of them are shifting nationalist. Okay. So yes, rightward, yes. But in a separatist. Well, not everybody. I'm trying to be gracious. Explaining. I say it's like when we say conservative.
What does that mean?
Yeah. What does that mean? It means you don't ever do anything, because that's what I hear.
Okay.
With regards to Ukraine, I think that Trump's estimation of his ability to stop it in a day is probably overstated.
No, really?
Trump wouldn't do that.
He's never done that before.
I think there's going to be, it's all so tied. He has to, did y'all ever do fondue as a kid, or am I just old? Do you know what fondue is? Where you have the melted stuff? Yeah. All these sticks and the melted cheese are going to have to be pulled out at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's a stretch of a metaphor, but just go with me.
Yeah.
I'm hungry. Okay. But he's gonna Schedule F, for the administrative state to go along with what he's going to have to do, he's going to have to hold a huge hammer over their heads. Mm-hmm. Okay. He's going to, the Senate right now is incentivized because of the money laundering facet to the post-war consensus, and the current order wants tremendous amounts of power over the executive branch. That's what all this back and forth over these cabinet positions are. I mean, the Senate wants. there is no executive branch right now.
You mean to tell me that Lisa Murkowski just really cares about the possibility that Pete Hegseth might have had too much to drink one time? Like that's you're telling me that's fake?
Yes, I am. And most of those, shoot, have you sat down with some of these senators? Their staffers.
They don't really talk to me, but yeah.
They're staffers for a lot of them. Some of them are. I honestly, I met with Marco before he was ever elected. Marco's not a dumb guy. I don't agree with him a lot, but he's a believer and he's a neocon. He is a neocon. He is what he is, but he's not a dumb. But some of these guys are just not. These these are career politicians who are not that. These aren't 140, 150 IQ guys.
No,
they're just
not JD Vance. Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Joe
Not,
Biden is much more typical of a career senator.
Yeah, I mean,
JD Vance is. Yeah,
and I don't mean that to say that they're not stupid people either. No. For the most part, some of them have way outlived their IQ. But the point is, these are staffers running these things, and staffers are just part of the blob, right? And so, and the homosexual influence among the staffers, especially the male staffers, is just, you wouldn't believe it, because these are people without families, without any ties to tradition or morality, and they can work 80 hours and think it's great, and then have their whatever they're doing.
And James O'Keefe gets all of his intel.
Well, yeah, and I mean, we all unfortunately saw, or maybe you didn't, if you didn't count yourself blessed, in the Senate hearing room, some of the staffers doing their thing. Like, I
mean, that's typical.
So
I didn't think that was outside of the norm.
The Senate is part of, and the staff that is immense, is part of that administrative state. Okay, we'd love to think that the legislative is separate, much less so on the House of Representatives sides, because these guys are constantly running, and they're but the Senate is a mess, and so cleaving the Senate's power over the executive, that's the key thing that makes all the rest of this work. And so to me, can Trump play that tap dance? And I don't know. And so all that to say, we went down that rabbit trail to say, I think that's as important in him being able to negotiate a settlement with Putin in over Ukraine, because I'm sorry, but he's not giving any of that land back.
No,
it's just not going to happen. So the question is whether or not Russian military is stationed there, or whether it's neutral, or whether all of Ukraine is neutral. I mean, honestly, what I think should happen is the entirety is Trump says you can have the what you've gained, but all of Ukraine is neutral from here on out, including the part that is a Russian administrative state district. That's fine.
They annexed the Donbass. Yeah.
That's right. But whether or not what would make sense and what would serve, I think, everyone's purposes throughout Europe is it's all demilitarized. Ukraine becomes a demilitarized. And can we do something about the ridiculous nature of the Ukrainian government that isn't going to be part of Russia now? Because how did that group, I mean, we know how that group got in power, but that doesn't represent Ukrainians.
No.
I mean, come on, Zelensky, are you kidding me? What's the percentage? I don't want to make this about that, but
I think we need to start wrapping it up here.
CJ's got to get home. Late. He's got to get to.
I got things.
It is Friday.
Yeah. We have things.
We have many things, many important things.
Well, it's been way too long since we had you on, Ron, so we really appreciate you're giving us your time.
Yeah,
and
this
knowledge.
is good.
Always happy to.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and I mean, hopefully we can have you on to talk about like esoteric Bible things instead of happenings. But we'll have to have you on again really, really soon, and we love you and appreciate you so much.
Oh, thanks,
boys. Is there anything you want to promote? Have you written anything recently?
I wrote a piece, a bit of an esoteric piece that's up at American Reformer right now, Against Worldview.
Did you get that new book, Against Worldview?
I didn't. This was all just Ron.
Let me send it to you. Let me send you the book.
I would love it.
Yeah,
I would love that.
He's like a buddy of Stephen Wolf recommended it to me. So, anyways, we'll talk about that off air.
But I wrote a piece there, and then I wrote a couple of long threads on Twitter recently. One about the mall culture of the 80s and why it was important and what purpose it served and how that developed into megachurch culture. And then I wrote a piece on I wrote a long effort thread on that you can find about the affordable housing portions of the tax code. And I promise they're interesting.
No, I believe you.
No, you're a man of many topics.
The mall rat thing, I need to read that now. Yeah. Is that an American Reformer too? Is that on your site?
No, those are both on Twitter.
Twitter. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Well, while we were eating lunch, you were contributing to the American mind. So thank you, Ron.
That's
you
right.
bet.
That's
well,
right.
You guys have a great weekend.
All right, you too. Thank you all for watching. If you like what we talk about here, if you like what Ron had to say or we had to say, all the knowledge that just got dropped in an hour, share this, subscribe.
Yeah, if you like all the things Ron said, send me and Andrew some money.
That's right. I support that.
Yeah,
I'm good with that.
Exactly. But seriously, thank you all for watching. We appreciate everybody. We have the highest IQ listener base of any podcast in the world. And we know it. You guys are great in the comments section everywhere else. So thank you so much. And stay peacefully dangerous. And we will see you next time.